Release the Snyder Cut, am I right?
Hey guys, it's Sean O'Connell, the managing editor here at CinemaBlend, back with another weekly Snyder Cut series, and in this particular run of shows, we are breaking down the individual members of the Justice League to talk about how different they're going to be in the HBO Max version as opposed to the theatrical. So I'm inviting Hannah Saulic to come back and join me for another conversation. Hi Hannah, how are you?
I'm fantastic because we're talking about Jason Momoa, so I can't not be excited.
Exactly. And I want to point out the fact that I have my Aquaman sweatshirt on,
Yes.
which was given to me when James Wan's movie came out. And Hannah is decked appropriately enough in Arthur Curry green. So we are ready to dive into the character and talk about all the different ways that he will be different now that he's back in Zack's hands.
And it's a little bit different with Aquaman because unlike some of the other characters that we've talked about, we don't really expect him to be that different. But
Right.
Obviously, Joss Whedon still did kind of just reduce all of the characters to nothingness, essentially, or just really shallow, like, stereotypes, I should say. So let's just go ahead and start with just what we think was wrong with Aquaman in Justice League.
Tuck.
Sure. Okay, I'll pick up from there because, and a lot of this is going to lean into a bit of what we talked about with The Flash, in that Joss's approach to the material and all the characters seemed to be, how do we make them funnier? How do we make them lighter? And there's a lot that comes with Arthur Curry that Zack tried to put into him that was melancholic. I mean, he's a loner. He's an isolated hero who is trying to find his place in both societies, in our own and in his home world of Atlantis, where he doesn't feel like he belongs. He kind of feels like, oh gosh, I can't believe we're going to say this, a fish out of water in both locations.
Come on, Sean.
Yeah,
You're better than that. You're better.
It was coming, and as soon as I saw it coming,
You should get out.
but there's no other way to really put it. He kind of is. But it's not like Flash or when we eventually get to Cyborg, how so much stuff got left on the cutting floor. I think we got to see most of what Arthur is going to be involved in, starting with primarily Bruce going to that fishing village to recruit Arthur Curry and convince him to be part of the League. Now, even though when you go back in theatrical cut and watch those scenes, though, you can see very distinct places where there are reshoots and punch-ins to put different versions of Jason Momoa's line deliveries, and you can tell Ben's hair is different, or the way that Ben's face looks in some of these cuts. And so while I think, Bruce Wayne is going to show up in this town and he's going to recruit Arthur Curry by trying to appeal to the people in the village, it's not going to be played for laughs the way that it is so often in theatrical cut.
You do it dressed like a bat, like an actual bat.
We saw a lot of that opening scene in what was, I think it was 2016's Comic-Con trailer for Justice League before Zack had stepped away. And I think a lot of that is still in theatrical cut, but you're right. It's like the scene where they walk out of the bar and they're trying to make Batman funny in addition to just like really leaning into the fact that like Jason Momoa is a bro. And I think it's still fine for him to be like essentially this very bro-y dude, but like there's gotta be another layer to that.
I honestly think one of the funniest, interactions in the early Zack trailers is when Arthur comes up on the rooftop and he's like,
Just like a bat. I dig it. Maybe temporary.
Yeah.
like, that's funny. Like, those two should not get along right away. And I want to see more of that interaction. And that's where Zack was talking about bringing these characters in and leaning into their personalities is going to make the team building aspect of Justice League lighter anyway. It's not a Batman v Superman. It's these guys getting together and figuring out how to fight together. And so I want to see more of that. I want to see it handled properly.
I hear you can talk to fish.
So let's go back to that 2016 trailer because it's a really good one to talk about. It opens with Bruce with the horse and he's out in the snow, and it feels, I'm not going to say Game of Thrones-ish, but it feels epic, right? Like this is a mission that this man is on. And that gets cut up and chopped up really, poorly in theatrical cut. But then all of that gets stripped away in the scene that you're talking about, where they leave the bar and they're having that conversation together, because like glaringly there's the moment where Momoa takes his shirt off and he's going into the water. Yeah. And then he's very clearly in a tank of water with a big green screen around him where he's like,
You're out of your mind, Bruce Wayne.
And he like turns and goes to the water. It's so bad. It's as bad as Henry's CGI face, where when someone looks at that scene, I can't comprehend how they looked at it and they were like, yeah,
these two things mesh well. Yeah, even like the coloring is like, it's like overly saturated. I mean, again, we're nitpicking because we can now obviously go back and look shot for shot, but it's
sure.
Like, ooh.
Yeah, that is brutal. So then from when Arthur leaves that conversation and Bruce didn't necessarily win him over, and that was a scene that's part of the earlier marketing materials where, and fans point to this as an example of the type of humor that Zack is going to include, where Diana is saying to Bruce, like,
He said he'll fight with us?
More or less.
More or more less?
Probably more or less.
He said no.
He said no.
it's funny, it's clever, it's not like a beat you over the head punchline thing, it's just it didn't work. And so from there, Momoa is going to go back to somewhere underneath the sea and confront Mera and lean into the fact that, like, hey, I'm not really from your world either, you know? Aquaman in particular really had to serve the larger master of setting up another movie that was coming right on the heels of Justice League.
Which is
Flash or
weird,
Cyborg.
though, because Aquaman kind of ignores a lot of what is said in Justice League. Because, like, there's the scene with Mera where he's, like, before he gets his outfit and stuff, where he's talking to her and he's like,
What a saint.
You dare speak of Queen Atlanta that way?
Your queen left me on my father's doorstep and never gave me another thought.
he seems to have, like, a lot of animosity towards his relationship with his mom, but then in Aquaman's movie, it's like,
Your mother loved you more than anything in the world. But she had to return to Atlantis to keep you safe.
Are you saying they executed her? Because she had me?
what like, I don't get it, but...
It is, they don't fit together.
Yeah.
And part of that, I'm not going to necessarily blame Jeff Johns for that because I don't know 100% for sure. But I think that is Jeff Johns kind of manipulating what Zack was doing, what he tried to get Joss Whedon to do, what he wanted James Wan to sort of factor in. Aquaman does suffer from having a lot of people pulling at his creative batons and trying to figure out what direction they wanted the character to go in. And that's why I think he's liberated so much more by just being part of HBO Max.
People from Atlantis tell me to do this. Now you say do that. I want to be left alone.
So I think we're going to see a confrontation with Steppenwolf underneath the water. We get a watered down sort of light junior varsity version of that fight because Zack does share on Vero years ago on his birthday. He shows that first test of Aquaman swimming up to a throne. So he was absolutely playing around with how to make the underwater characters look realistic. And this wasn't something that we got to necessarily see a whole heck of a lot of prior to Justice League. People make fun of the Momoa cameo in Batman vs. Superman slightly because it looks like he's trying to hold his breath underwater and still figure out how to film properly, you know, these characters. So I think you're going to get an enhanced version of what you saw in Justice League, but there's still going to be the fight. I think you're still going to get Arthur Curry showing up underneath the Gotham Harbor to save the League as they're in that confrontation. These beats are all going to happen. I just think they're going to be better.
So let's talk about Aquaman's powers. A lot of people feel like Aquaman didn't really come off as cool as he actually is.
Yeah, so in the three main points where he has the opportunity to really shine, and again, he's not one of these characters that is fully formed and fully developed. Like, the Batman in this world and the Wonder Woman in this world have been their characters forever. Aquaman's still pretty early on in his journey. It's not like he's been fighting massive battles underneath the sea. He's trying to figure out his place. So I don't expect him to be fully formed, but we do know that he's going to be more significant in the final confrontation. Zack has hinted at the amount of ways that he will contribute to Steppenwolf's death. I expect him to be more of a bigger part of the Superman Monument Park fight, as I've been calling it. I want to know the name of that park. Like, we keep calling it Monument Park.
Oh, I just thought you did. I went with you. I was like, sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're calling it that.
I'll fact check it. I'll put some text up.
But he doesn't get to do a whole heck of a lot in that fight, and I expect him to show off more of his might. But I think where you're really going to see him show off is in the underwater battle that we see briefly when Steppenwolf succeeds in getting the Mother Box from the Atlanteans. And I think that the scene that you see him stopping the wave that's crashing down into Gotham Harbor, that'll probably play out close to as is. It's one of those sequences similar to Flash with the sword tip, that it's so elaborate and it requires so much special effects that I don't think Joss was able to reshoot that. I'm sure that that's something that's going to be part of Zack's version. It's just him being able to use those powers to his fullest extent. But it's not like there's a battle in particular that will move itself to, like when you read a Justice League comic and the team is dealing with a planet-threatening villain of some way, shape, or form, they always figure a way to shift the action somehow to the water, and it allows Aquaman to really rely on his powers. I don't think that Zack is going to have the ability to work in like a huge water sequence necessarily, but I think the beats that were evident in theatrical will still play out. There are those elements in those trailers where he does at least land on the Batmobile and rides alongside of him. He does jump into the air and gets caught by parademons and flies off. That is definitely a Zack shot because it was part of Zack's material. And Hannah, go back through the old trailers. I'm sure you have all this archived. But Aquaman coming through the sky, riding on the body of one of the parademons and crashing through the building where he rolls out and does the hair flip. Is that a Zack shot or is that in Zack's? I need to know if that's in Zack's trailers. I'm kind of blanking right now.
Find out in post.
All right, thank you.
And if it is, you'll see it here right now. Another point that you made about the final battle when we were talking about Wonder Woman is just how it felt like Wonder Woman and Aquaman were both really, really sidelined in that final battle. So what you're saying is that we don't expect him to be as sidelined. He's not going to be like, you know, the star of the show, obviously, because like you said, it's not like we can get any big water sequences. That we know. I mean, maybe we can. I don't know.
No, I think the majority of that final battle that we saw, that all is going to change. I think so much of that was manipulated because when you look at that purple tentacle thing that's spewing out through the city and everything with the Russian family and how Superman and Cyborg figure out a way to separate the mother boxes, I think all of that's going to be different. This is the place where it's rumored that a potential Green Lantern could even show up. And while I don't necessarily believe that Lantern's going to be part of the final battle, I think
that it will be Ryan Reynolds.
I certainly don't think it's going to be Ryan Reynolds. These are the things that I know that Zack does well. Like, I know that the visual effects people who have been working on his cut have let it be known in certain interviews that the fight sequences in Justice League are far more elaborate and choreographed in a way that you've never seen before. And if you just think back to how long the battle against Doomsday was in Batman vs. Superman and how he figured out ways to give all three of the Trinity members times to shine, I don't doubt that Zack has the plan in place to have each of his Justice League members not only have times to stand out on their own, but work together.
Ride ain't over yet.
My man.
So I expect him to be a far more significant part of the final battle, and I think that Zack will properly use him. And again,
What's on your weird mind?
I want to see how into the idea of resurrecting Superman he is, because that'll be a bone of contention between the Justice League members, and I want to see who's for it and who's against it. Bruce Wayne obviously is pushing heavily for it. It happens, so we know that they're going to go for it, but I'm wondering where Arthur falls on that.
I think he says at one point, like, this is a bad idea, but he's not, you know, up in arms about it.
And as Superman is sort of waking up and being possessed, he's super against it, right? Like when he's at Monument Park, he's kind of just like, this is, and then
He's
they
like,
use the
this
Pet
is
Cemetery joke
not.
again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's not all right.
What? Arthur, you need to relax. Your adrenaline's spiking.
Because he's not all right.
Like we said with The Flash, he's just not going to be as jokey. He's going to be more heroic. He's going to be more, not solemn 100%. Like that's implied.
He'll seem like a real person who has like nuances and subtleties to his humor.
We can only hope. Now, the unfortunate part is that I would love to see him in the armor. I would love to see him in the costume that he gets at the end of Aquaman, and he won't yet. In that aspect, and only in that aspect, it's going to feel like a step backwards because he doesn't yet have the trident and the costume that he earns at the end of his solo movie. And it ultimately would be really cool to see the first building of the Justice League team to have Arthur fully dressed in that gear and in that armor. But when you see the hero shot of the team all together, at the end he's still in his sort of initial prototype put together costume. So
I don't mind.
Okay, so now let's talk about Aquaman's ending scene. Because in theatrical cut, it's this terrible CGI mess that's pretty laughable, but we do expect that to be different, right?
Oh, him swimming? Is that
Yeah.
him swimming at high speed? This is what I think a lot of the additional photography is leading us to, which is getting us to different conclusions of all the different characters and their arcs. Everything that's going to happen from the moment that the League defeats Steppenwolf to how it trails out, that last 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, that might be some of the most fascinating. Like, I cannot wait to see specifically those last 15 minutes, because is Zack bringing it all to a conclusion? Is he setting up teases for additional stories that he would like to tell? Is he giving us an ending that's just an open-ended, hey, these characters exist now, and every once in a while they're going to get together as a team and fight off things? Like, I can't wait to see where all of that goes. And so because Arthur had that sort of open-ended, like, I'm going to go talk to my father ending, I think Zack particularly, and working with Jason, who he adores, and the two of them adore each other, they're going to come up with some other way to sort of send Arthur in a different direction or bring some closure to Arthur. I don't expect to see any of that stuff, the resolution that we saw in theatrical cut.
Because it doesn't have to relate to Aquaman solo movie in any way, shape, or form.
No, and in fact, because Zack refers to it as an Elseworld type thing, he can really have it branch off to do anything he wants it to do. But some of that stuff in those closing minutes I really liked. I liked the idea that Bruce's mansion, the deserted mansion, was going to eventually become the hall, you know, or the table that would hold the members. I would like to keep some of that. I would like to keep an indication that we're heading toward a Justice League story, because I want the idea of a future Justice League movie to eventually happen, whether it's in the Snyderverse HBO Max area or whether it be something theatrical that could eventually come. So yeah, I'm going to be really intrigued, because we do know that they're doing an Aquaman 2 and Jason's on the hook for that one. So is it going to set that up, or is it going to truly stay isolated from what's happening in the DCEU? I'm really fascinated to see how they play with that, and I think Aquaman's conclusion is going to tell us a lot about the plans of where DC is going in the future.
Is Jason Momoa coming back for additional photography? I know Amber Heard was included in that report.
I have not heard anything about Jason. Amber definitely was in that article. Jason always feels like he's just kind of at Zack's house. I'm just not surprised if he's just like on a couch,
hanging out.
Yeah, talking about photography and sharing cameras with each other, probably drinking tequila. It just feels like something that Jason would do. He's just kind of around. So, yeah, he was the one who was always pushing really hard for the release of Snyder Cut. Those hysterical videos he was putting out on his cell phone. So if Zack needs Jason there, Jason's there. I just not have.
He's just on set. He's not shooting anything. He's just
just hanging out, doing
boosting morale.
Chime in with ways that you think Arthur is going to be different, or ways that you want him to be different when we get around to HBO Max and the 4-part series that's coming in 2021. Hit subscribe and turn on your notifications while you're down there, because as you can see, we're building up to the biggest ones. And so we'll be back next week with another character breakdown.